squeeze a little bit this way. All right.
And we are back.
I
How's
think
my hair?
It's great. It's great. Mine's bad, so that's why I have a cap on. All right. All right. Hello, people. Thank you for joining our live Q&A. Let's just make sure that everyone's here. So come say hello on the chat, just so that I know it's working.
Hey, welcome back. Let us know if you can hear us, if our audio and video is working today.
Hello, NestFan5. That's great. We'll just wait a little bit because it seems like we need to wait for people to trickle in. It takes a little bit of time sometimes. Not everyone is on time.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have 15 people right now, 12.
Did you see Apple's announcing new phones?
Oh yeah, I can't wait for it.
This Tuesday, I think, or so.
Yep.
Yeah.
So like, I'll probably just watch the whole thing during the day. What are you most excited about? MacBooks, like phones, Apple Watch?
Actually, I've been getting more into. I have a Pixel 3, so I've I've been learning. I've been trying to learn to use that more.
Is that an iPhone?
Yeah, I use an iPhone, but now that I got fired, basically,
right.
I don't need to use iOS anymore because I was an iOS developer.
Oh, that's why you use
so
iOS.
Like, I think that the Pixel and the Android stuff could be very good. But yeah, we'll also have to see what Apple comes up with.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for. I want to know what the new watch is. I kind of want to see what the Hermes watch is. Like the luxury one that they usually get.
Yeah.
Yeah. I might not buy it though, but I just like to see the luxury stuff. But yeah. Cool. Do you know what time it starts? Like 10 a.m. I guess.
Well, they're streaming it. They're gonna live stream it on YouTube.
Oh, nice.
Which will be a first. Which will be interesting.
All right. Okay. All right. I guess let's start.
Yeah, let's get started. So it's been a while, so welcome back and thanks for joining us. We have a couple announcements. Primarily one announcement here, which is that there's a new video actually that I just released this morning for the course. It's called What Hiring Managers Want to Know. So you can check it out. It's in the course modules now. I added it. It's actually one of those. It was a video that I had been planning to release on my original Tech Lead channel, but when I started thinking about it, I realized that perhaps the audience would be more focused and targeted if it was just for the Tech Interview Pro series, because it's really focused on interview prep. So check that out. Got a lot of good tips. It's really talking about it's based on a Harvard Business Review article about what they found hiring managers want to know. One of the key takeaways actually from that one is that you need to keep the conversation, the interview process conversational. Okay, so oftentimes interviews will devolve into like Q&A, right?
And that's not good?
I don't think it's very good because the best interviews that I've conducted, it's very conversational. It's like I talk to someone and they feel like a coworker, right? I don't say to a coworker like, I don't know what else to say to you. How about, why don't you tell me your top 3 weaknesses? Right? Like, you don't do that.
Right.
Or you don't say like, so what technologies did you use? Or like, tell me about time when you did this. The conversation should just flow more naturally. And then when I'm talking to someone, I can just feel like, this person, I want that person to be a coworker. I wish I could go, have lunch with this person more often and pick their brain more. And it's just like talking to a friend.
Yeah.
So that's one thing hiring managers want to know is whether you can gel with the team.
Well, is the hiring manager the same as the interviewer? Because sometimes the hiring manager is not the same as the interviewer.
So oftentimes, sometimes the hiring manager will be the last person in the interview.
Oh, right.
Okay. So if you pass through all the other engineers who interview you, and actually even for engineers too, right? Like, it's good if you can talk to the hiring manager in that way. I actually remember so recently, actually like a year ago when I was in Facebook, you go through boot camp and you talk with teams and you figure out like which team you want to work with. And it's funny that even I was making this mistake so late in my career where I would talk to people and I would try to validate my own skills. I would say like, oh yeah, I have experience in X, Y, and Z. I was a tech lead over at Google. I can do all these things. And I just kept qualifying myself.
Mm.
Um, and it was a very cold conversation. There was no charm in it. There was no bond, no friendliness. It was just like me trying to keep proving myself. And I think probably like I was probably more than qualified already, but teams weren't that attracted to me because uh, I could not connect on a more
Right, right.
personal level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I actually went through the boot camp too, but for data science at Facebook. Same thing. Yeah, I think the best ones, the ones that liked me the most, were the ones that are more conversational, because you already passed. Well, for Facebook at least, you already passed the interview, so they know that you're qualified already. You
Yeah,
should be.
yeah.
Maybe it's a little bit different if you have like specific skills like iOS, but for like a generalist data scientist, yeah, I think that was what's more important. And yeah, like treat it as if it's your future coworker, and how would you like to interact with your future coworker. You don't want it to be just a transactional experience, right? So it makes a lot of sense. Okay, do you have that link for the hiring manager, the Harvard Review thing? Like, what is
Um,
Harvard Review? Because I heard about it, but I'm not really sure.
I think
Is it a?
Harvard Business Review just comes up with articles
Hmm.
like, about management and
Mhm.
career things like that. So like usually they're well written, well researched articles. I posted it in the course and I linked to it. So
Okay.
feel free to check that out.
Cool, cool, cool.
Yeah. And then I mean, maybe you guys know the other big announcement is I was fired.
Yeah.
um,
F.
yeah, yeah.
I never understood that meme, but people press F. But yeah. So how was So did everyone see the video? Like, just say yes if you guys seen the video. So
Yeah.
in case we don't want to reiterate the stuff that was actually, you know what, we could just summarize what was said in the video, just so that most people here know. But
Well, essentially, what happened was, I did get called into HR. They were asking me about YouTube, Tech Interview Pro, um, and it's kind of like a mix of things, right? And in the end, it was not really clear to me actually, like why. But I know that, I would say like, well, other people run YouTube channels too, and then they would say, give us those names. Like, well, who are these people, right? So um, essentially, they just said like they're going to investigate, and then they just told me due to a policy violation. I was like, what is this violation? And they wouldn't clarify
mm,
any further.
hmm
Um, but so anyway, I have like a pretty interesting tip from this, and I wish I did this more often, which is that anytime you go into a meeting that you feel is important, whether it be with like your manager for a one-on-one performance review, you're gonna ask for a raise, you talk to HR, if you record it, um, it can protect you, right? Because if people say something that you feel is not legitimate, if they give you like some BS reason, then you at least have that on record. Um, Actually, one funny story I want to say is, so my brother was working in tech, and I think this was in Japan, and he went into a meeting with his a manager. His performance was like it wasn't that great, and then the manager said something illegal.
mm,
I don't remember what it was, but it was pretty strange. And my brother happened to record that, and then he played it back to him and said like, "I have what you said on record, so you better let me keep my job, or I will leak this. Like I will send this to everybody." And so he managed to just stay on payroll in the company because the manager did not want to fire
hmm
him.
What do you think about this though?
If you record it, you need their consent. Um, it's so as I understand, it's like it's kind of a legally if you want to use that in court or something like that, then
Hmm.
yeah.
Oh,
But
I see,
like
I see.
if it's informal,
Hmm.
um, you know,
Hmm. Oh, apparently in Canada you can record the convo without the consent as long as you're part of the convo. I didn't know that. I'm
I think
Canadian.
it's kind of like, do you really want like if push comes to shove, if you really get into a court case about this, then maybe maybe not.
Yeah.
But like,
Hmm.
uh,
Interesting.
yeah, I mean I think
We're not
it could just
lawyers.
serve, yeah, it could just
We're
serve as
not
a little bit
lawyers.
more
Yeah,
firepower for you.
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah,
Cool. So,
but
so what happened exactly? Did they just escort you out right away? Like, what should we do before, you know, if you think that you're getting fired? Do you think you should do
yeah,
something?
so I have like a lot of stuff on my laptop, and I realized that I needed to, um, I couldn't get the data off of it fast enough. I managed to move some stuff, like to upload some stuff as I was like taking a look at it, but I would recommend like you do
Hmm.
backups or like just have another computer. Like the best thing is to just have a second computer in which
Hmm.
you keep your personal stuff.
That's true.
Um,
Yeah, I definitely recommend having your work laptop separate from your personal laptop, but unfortunately, not everyone has the luxury to buy like a shit ton of laptops.
yeah. Plus,
But
I was just so cheap. I didn't want to buy a second laptop.
see, that's why I tell you, man, you gotta spend your money. Like me, right? I have like three laptops behind. Never mind. But yeah. Anyways, but how are you feeling? Like, is everything okay? I just.
Uh, yeah. So I think like originally I was really disappointed and bummed out about it until I realized there's not much of a real setback, right? Like I can immediately go and apply to another job
Mhm.
and
No.
just pick right back up where where I'm at.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I feel like part of it is just the social conditioning of the
Hmm.
word like, oh, you got fired, and then that makes you feel
Hmm.
like, oh, that's so bad.
Hmm.
Um, but perhaps that was more of a
Right.
age, like something from the past. Like these days, it's okay.
Hmm. Yeah. And I kind of want to draw a parallel between you got fired and you got rejected, right? Because we feel really bad when we get rejected, for example, from jobs, from interviews, and stuff like that. But you have to remember that one, it's not the end of the world. Even if you get rejected, first of all, you can apply next year again, probably.
Yeah.
And then there are also tons of other jobs currently, because like software engineer is so high in demand right now that there are tons of other jobs out there. Now, I used to feel this way when I did my first few internships. The first rejection I had, I was so bummed out. I felt like I was shit, and I didn't have a lot of like I didn't have self worth, kind of, right? But then I realized that, dude, that's just part of the game. Especially because I did internship, we did 50 interviews. Sorry, not 50 interviews. We applied to at least 50 jobs,
Yeah.
and then you probably only get like 10 interviews. That's only if you're good too. You get 10 interviews, so that's already a 40%. Is it 40%? No, 80% like rejection, right? And then within those interviews, you're probably only going to get one or two offers. So think about it, that's 50 jobs and only one or two offers. But after you've done this many, many times, you start to be desensitized of rejection. Kind of the same thing. Like when you get fired, like this doesn't happen a lot. That's why people are like, "Oh my god, my life is ruined. My life is, dead. Like I have no more opportunities anymore." But that's still not true. You have to always look back, be detached of your current stuff that you own, like your job and stuff like that, and remember that there's a lot more to this world than just that single job, right? You actually have this, like, you do not suddenly lose your skills if you lose a job, or you do not suddenly lose your interviewing skills if you fail an interview. All the things that you've worked so hard to have to achieve, it's still within you, and that's like what's the most important. It's less about the stuff that's on your resume, but more about like what's the skills that you've achieved throughout all this practice, right? So the parallel between firing and getting a rejection is a little bit similar, and you have to remember that there's still a long road ahead.
Yeah, I actually it's interesting if you take a look at tech. I feel like tech is a little bit different than other industries in that, like, look at Netflix, right? They have a culture of firing. Um, they bring you in, they try you out for like a year or two, and then they fire you. And um, Facebook actually tends to have a higher firing rate than other companies as well. Like everybody there is very stressed, and you see people vanishing all the time. It's probably more than Google, for example. So um, this this could be a kind of a new development, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
in like in the way jobs work, where people come in, getting fired is more common in tech, but people are able to recover. And then if you even take a look at the hiring process, like tech tends to just bring in people for on sites, and they'll just reject you if like if they don't think you're qualified. So maybe in so my guess, my assumption is that perhaps in the tech industry, um, rejections are much higher than like if you were
Mm-hmm.
applying to uh, a management job or something like that, right? And getting fired from a management job or consulting or whatever may also be more devastating than if you were to get fired in tech, say.
Mm-hmm. Cool, cool.
So yeah, just overall, I'm just saying like develop a harder skin, and rejection is part of the game.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I know all these motivational videos are kind of cheesy, but they almost all say the same thing, and there has to be a fundamental reason why.
Yeah.
And that same thing is that you've only seen the success, but not like the failures in the past. Every success that you've seen, like on TV and stuff like that, they never talk about the failures, but they probably have a lot of them. And the reason why they ended up being successful is because instead of giving up halfway, they continued through all these failures and they learned from it, and then they become stronger, and then yeah, and then that's how you can get success.
Yeah, I mean, I want to highlight actually. Anytime I talk about this, I think about people I know who just removed themselves from the job market. They get rejected from Google or Facebook or some company they want to work for. Once or twice, right? Maybe even just once, and then after that, they'll just say, "Nah, they're good. They're not gonna apply anymore. They're fine. They don't want to face that rejection anymore." And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that's it's such a shame because they're beating themselves up too much over that. Like the way to play the game is to just be persistent and just keep trying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I actually want to answer this question. It's like once you join Fang, how you remain employed and successful. Like my personal opinion is that even once you join Fang, don't forget that your learning doesn't stop here, right? Like just joining Fang, sure, that's like a step, but you still have to be fresh on even interviewing skills. Actually, you still have to be fresh because we said this many, many times. Even if you're not looking for a new job, but sometimes there are other opportunities out there that pay way more because for some reason in software engineering, if you switch jobs, you get a huge pay increase.
yeah,
So how do you like stay relevant is yes, you learn on the job, make sure that like remember it's not always about be selfish a little bit. Think about how you can take advantage of your company. Like learn as much as you can. You know, like they have so many resources, so it's your perfect opportunity to learn and become a better version of yourself. You know, instead of just thinking of them, they pay you and then you do the work and then because in that sense that's just a golden handcuff, right? You have to think of these companies as stepping stones for your personal growth rather than an end goal. Because imagine if you just said, "Oh, I want to work at Fang. That's my goal." Once you get there, and what are you going to do? You know, you're not going to have a goal in your life anymore. You know, the real goal that you should have in your life is always about yourself, something that is not external facing but something internal. So remind yourself to always keep improving, being the better version of yourself. Because imagine once you get into Fang company, what if Fang is not good anymore? Maybe there are other companies that become better. Do you stay there? Like, no, you don't. It's kind of like Sun Microsystem. They used to be the best company that you could get into, or like IBM. But now when people work there, it's like, oh, you work at IBM or Sun Microsystem. That's not really cool anymore, right?
yeah. So I think what I like to do actually is I always like to think about my next job, right? So even if you get into Fang, maybe many people will only stay under 3 years, right? And then you need to think about, well, after that, what are you going to do? And this really applies to any company, right? Many people I know, they'll get into a company. Maybe you have a job right now, and you don't expand yourself, you don't build yourself beyond that, and you start learning a bunch of technologies that don't position you well for your next job. So for example, maybe you're working on like a bunch of strange proprietary technologies right now and languages that just aren't that useful, but another part of your company could be working on something that's very interesting and useful that can position, like maybe Python Django, right? And knowing that, maybe that can position you well into your next job that you want to get into. Well, if you were to just go read up on that and learn that, you have access to some of this stuff that can get you there. um, because I know, like when I was working at Google, um, many Google engineers actually cannot get into Facebook, I believe, because they just don't have the skills. They've pigeonholed themselves down into this one area. Um, so what I did actually when I was there was I would learn about the broader systems. And then when I interviewed at Facebook, I would be able to answer like systems design interview questions really well because I went and just learned about like how the whole system was being set up. Um, and that entire knowledge helped me land the job, where I like helped me basically ace those systems design interviews.
Cool,
Yeah.
cool, cool. All right. So let's go to the questions
Let's
now.
get to it. Yeah.
All right, cool, cool, cool. So we create a poll, and then you guys ask some questions, and you guys were voting for it. So we're gonna go from like the top most answered, sorry, the most requested question, and then down to the bottom. Actually, can you open it up? Yeah. All right. All right. Let me read some of the chat questions real quick. Just interesting question. Yeah, starting something. Actually, you want to talk about this? It's
What?
not a bad idea.
Starting something alongside Fang?
Yeah, like free
You,
time. Well, I mean, you could kind of guess how much free time we have since we do YouTube, right? So we have at least some free time. But for me, at least, I think in the beginning, maybe you should work harder, like at your fan company. If if you really want to do well, it's only once you've proven yourself where you're kind of used to the workload and you understand what is the highest impact and you understand what you should do, how you should contribute to your team, where you could really easily prioritize your life instead, right? And then once you prioritize your life, you know how many hours to put into work that is like enough for you to do a satisfying job. Because even if you work very hard, there's diminishing marginal returns as how many hours you put into your work. So for me, I actually have a great amount of free time. I don't think I work more than uh, I don't work more than 40 hours a week for my job, except for maybe sometimes when I want to work. Because the thing about me is I like to design my life in a way that I could choose to work on whatever I want to work on. So sometimes when I enjoy that thing, then yeah, I might work more than 40 hours a week. But then if it's something that's just work that I just have to get done, I'm not going to spend more than 40 hours a week because like I think that's way more than enough to get things done at work. And then once I get home, I could do stuff that I want to do. Sometimes YouTube videos, Tech and Pro and stuff like that. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, um, this is an interesting story for me. Actually, is the way I actually became tech lead at Google was I put in the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I identified this opportunity in the YouTube iOS app where I could um, unify the iPad and iPhone code, right? And it totally changed the code base and architecture of the app, and it made me the tech lead of app architecture there. Because and that is not something you do on the job, right? Like nobody tells you, nobody assigns you this task. So I was just going around, and then I realized like, hey, what if we were to do this? And so I spent like my evenings and weekends, and it only took like probably 1 or 2 weeks. It doesn't take that long to come up with a design document. And when I presented that, it just kicked off the whole project.
Nice.
Um, so it's like, to me, it's about identifying opportunities. A fame job is just another opportunity. You can pursue climbing that career ladder if you want to. If you see that there's, and oftentimes it's an excellent opportunity for your additional time. Like if you want to put all your weekends and evenings and overtime into that, it could pay off. Um, but instead, you could also put it into some side hustle, and that could pay off as well. And you just need to decide like which area do you think has the highest opportunity. Sometimes it'll be climbing that career ladder. Sometimes there's just nothing to do. You don't know what impact you can make there, and then you would be better off pursuing that side hustle. If you do the side hustle, just keep it quiet. Like don't go telling your coworkers about it. They're just gonna get jealous, right? Like, yeah, they're not going to be able to identify with that, in my experience.
All right. So back to the question. The first question was how to come up with a study plan to prep for coding interviews. How do I know when to stop for a topic? So this is it really depends on person to person. You have to first identify a few constraints that you have, like time. How much time do you have per day, and how much time do you have until your interview or interviews? And then also energy, because everyone has different energy levels. Some people can study for a whole day without cracking. Some people can only study 1 hour and they need a break. A lot of people give you set advice saying, oh, you'll study 4 hours per day, or you need to have like a to-do list or a calendar, time box it. You know, I'm going to say the truth. This doesn't work for everyone, right? Everyone has a different style of learning. I could tell you mine, but it might not be representative. But for me, what I did was I was still working at Facebook. So I would come back home and I would study until like well, actually I would eat dinner, so I would study like maybe 2 to 3 hours every day until it became a habit such that I don't even need to force myself anymore. And once it became a habit, it actually became kind of fun to start doing these coding questions, right? So my study plan in terms of time and constraint, I already had it down because I could just study every day. And then I told myself maybe 2, 3 days before the interview, I'm just going to spend the whole 3 days studying on that. I'm going to order takeout so that I could maximize my time. I was at the point where I didn't feel burnt out if I was studying, so this is good. But if you do feel like you're burning out because of studying, you should take a break. So that's why I said like it's always different in terms of the plan, like what should I study and focus more? What I did was I focused on breadth, right? So I do one question on, for example, stacks, one question on queues, one question on dynamic programming, and then like sooner or later you're gonna figure out like what are your miss ratio. Like if you didn't get the questions right, then that's a miss. You're gonna have a higher miss ratio for certain topics. So because you have a higher miss ratio for certain topics, you should focus on those. And then if you feel that you're good on certain topics, then don't study those anymore. It's exactly the same technique that I use in college. Whenever I study for an exam, there are many, many different topics. But I see a lot of students, at least my friends, some of my friends, they would study the stuff that they already know. Why? Because it felt comfortable, because it was easy. They felt good about themselves because they were able to get those questions right. This is the opposite of what you want to do. You want to fail a lot, right? You want to, whenever you start these questions, you want to do all the questions that are really hard that you keep failing so that you can learn, right? So always do a round of different questions. You could just go on like your book, like any book, or like just even our topics on our videos, like you see stack queues and stuff like that. Try those questions. If you see you fail them, if you see that you're failing them, then you put more effort into that. So it should be pretty easy to identify which ones are the hard ones for you. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, my study pattern was pretty strange actually. Like I didn't leak code at all when I got into Google, which is very strange. Probably I just didn't know about it. So yeah, like I just managed to do it. When I got into Facebook, I leak coded a little more. I don't know, maybe it was like 2 hours one or 2 hours a day for like a week or something like that. Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do all that much. Um,
Some people are just good at it.
yeah,
Like
well,
unfortunately, that's just how it works.
I
But
think one problem was so the key problem with leet code, okay, is that number one, you have to like identify every single edge case, and the code has to run and compile, and like that can double or triple the amount of time it takes to actually come up with the algorithm, right? Most people don't care about all of those small little things. Like if you pretty much have it there, then you're good. The
oh, you
second,
meant like actually coding on the website.
yeah,
Okay,
like
okay,
if you
all right,
actually have to run
yeah.
it and validate the answer. The
Got
other
it, got it.
problem is that they don't teach you um,
Communication.
yeah, they don't teach communication analysis, right? Like the time space complexity so much. It's it's really like so focused on that coding portion. Um, so if I did leak code, it was really for me like, and this there's another question about this one which we can answer here, but it's basically the idea that like I would do only easy, medium, and just get through as many as I can, and I won't even solve them. Like if I take a look and think like, I think I think I can do this one. I kind of have an idea, right? This looks like some tricky like pointer arithmetic, but I'm sure I could probably do that one. Then I might just move on. And the goal of that was just so that I don't get spooked when I
Mm-hmm.
see something. Like if somebody suddenly says like, like reverse a palindrome or something. And like if you didn't know what palindromes were, that could take you by surprise. So
Yeah, that's true. Because you start to see a lot of patterns. They always use the same things, like oh, find all the combinations or find all the what's the other word for combination for in
permutations.
permutations and stuff like that. Yeah. All right. Let's see what the next question is. How to use LeetCode effectively for practice? Do I choose any easy, medium question to practice? Um, I would just sort by popularity, right? Because like there's a function called popularity, and it means that a lot of people also had that question when they interviewed. So I would just sort by popularity,
Yeah.
and then sort by the company that you're applying for usually, because you could kind of get the style of their questions, right? So yeah, that's what I would do, and yeah, usually easy to medium questions would be okay. Hard if you want to do some brain exercises, but usually you're okay unless it's really popular. If that hard question is really popular, like LRU cache. That's a very popular one. You might just hear about it just to know it. But most of the time, easy and medium questions should be okay. In terms of how to be effective, like I said, make sure that you cover breadth, right? Cover all the topics. Don't just do one sort of things. Don't do the things that you're best at. Do the things that you're worst at. Yeah.
Yeah, and I should also mention, like, I think leak code probably trains you to write solutions like in a very functional format, and then they don't teach you so much about like object-oriented design,
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
or like um, coming up with really clean method signatures, right? If it runs, it's good. That's all they care about. But this it's not really going to get you through an entire coding interview.
Yeah, I also want to say like it's not only leak code that you can do. There are other like websites or like questions out there. Like Daily Interview Pro has a lot of questions, and I think the way that I practiced the most is I read the questions, I understand them, I solve it on paper in terms of like not the code wise, but just understanding it first. Like what's your logic, and then you write your code on paper. The thing about leak code is it might be dangerous because you're just gonna grind leak code so much that you're not talking to yourself, you're not practicing your communication, you're not thinking about analysis, you're just trying to make it work. And how do you do it? You write your code, you run it, you like it messes up, you debug it, you put some print statement or you erase some things, you do some random shit until it works. That's the worst way of practicing and might actually hurt you. I see so many people say like, oh, I did 300 leak code questions, how come I still can't pass the interview? I'm pretty sure it's because the way you did it is not effective because you're not actually learning, you're just trying to solve them, and especially you're not learning them while you're solving them. That's the worst, right? So that's why leak code can actually be dangerous because you might be sucked in. Yes, it's pretty addicting to just be on your computer and do it, but the thing is that's exactly the opposite of what you'll be doing during the interview, because in the interview you're going to be talking first, you're going to be you don't code, like you shouldn't code that fast, you should have the solution in your head first. But in leak code it's very easy to just try things with code, run it, or like write like a half a function just to run it to see if it works. That's not going to pass in interviews. What you want to do is you want to talk through it, write it on the whiteboard. Sometimes they have a computer, but still, you might not even be able to run it until the end. You don't want to fix your errors while writing your code. You want to talk through it, know exactly what you want to write, and then write your code. So it's very dangerous to just do leak code.
Yeah. One other quick point here is the analysis is so important. So if you saw the mock interview that we did with Joma, like Joma's analysis was really good in that one actually. Like he spent so much time analyzing the problem, he almost didn't have time to actually solve it. But when I reflect on that, like the analysis, like being able, so if you take a look at the solutions and like try writing the brute force solution, right? Understand why the time complexity and space complexity is so bad. Like why is it say 2 to the n, right? And then understand like the recursive one and the iterative version, and like all the other alternatives. And then like given a single leak code problem, the goal is not necessarily to solve it, but to solve it in many different ways and understand the time space complexity. And when you have a problem, like I encourage you to first think about the time space complexity first, and then solve it, right? Solving it is not actually the goal as much as analyzing it and giving all those alternatives.
Yeah, cool. See, Christian Douglas said that did a phone interview with Google, and they actually skipped some of the questions because the approach was so good, and then good communication. Yeah, they had good communication. So sometimes it might even be better. I don't know about this case, so don't quote me on this, but my friend told me that because he explains the questions really well and talks through it and comments a lot, sometimes they don't have time for a second question.
Yeah.
So it's not like they could penalize you because you communicate too well, right? So, but I'm not sure. I think you should get through as many questions as possible while being eloquent and explain your solutions fully. But yeah.
Like, let me explain to you the best interviews that I do. It usually goes like the candidate will explain several ideas.
Mm-mm.
Um, they come up with an idea, and that's exactly what I want. So I'll just say that sounds good. Why don't we
Mm-mm.
try and code that up?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, yeah.
And then they code it up.
Mm-hmm.
The worst interviews is like they're just like quiet
Mm.
and they don't really have a good idea. They don't have a concept,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just start coding.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they try and do something, and at the end it's like, even if they get it at that point, even if they solved it, um, it's
Mm-hmm.
not as strong as if like if they present the idea, I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I want. Let's try
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point because me, whenever I get a coding question, I just go through the brute force until the best solution. And a lot of the times, I actually don't know what the best solution is. So I would always write, I was like, oh, then I could fix this and it'll be O of log n. And then maybe I could do better. And then before I say that, they're like, oh, no, that's fine. Like that's good enough, right? So now I know, okay, that is the optimal solution. So you try to keep optimizing, and then there's like, oh no, this should be good. Like they're not gonna let you optimize even more because you can't. So it's very good to like try to see some hints from your interviewer. So that's what I do.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah.
Which top tier tech companies focus more on the technical whiteboard interview?
Uh-huh.
I do better at those than the behavior ones.
Oh. I mean, well, the first comment is that just because you're better at technical interviews, please don't disregard behavioral ones. They're quite important because, yeah, because you've seen a course, right? Like it's actually a big deal that you have good behavioral signals for them. And then in terms of which top tier companies, I actually don't know. The reason why I don't know is because yes, if I go to a certain company, they ask only technical questions, but they might actually be evaluating behavioral while they give technical interviews. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so honestly, I think that any like if you think of it this way, right? Like big tech companies like Facebook, Google, absolutely require good communication behavior skills because you're working with so many different people and cross-functional teams that if you come off and you're not able to communicate, you don't get in. And then small startups also require behavior because
Oh yeah,
there's such a tight knit small family.
they want to like you.
Yeah, you like your personality matters even more at
Mm-hmm.
startups, I would say, than your technical chops.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, that said, I will say like I
Mm-hmm.
believe that I know like a lot of Google interviews actually. Um, I know a lot of my colleagues there. They would like I asked them like if they asked about behavior, and they just said no.
Mm-hmm.
They would only go after the whiteboarding. But it depends, right? Um, and I know Facebook actually they throw in a behavior interview, like an entire interview is about behavior. For I don't know if it's for junior candidates, but for senior candidates at least. So, uh,
Oh yeah, and also Airbnb is. I heard Airbnb has a lot of focus on behavioral.
yeah. So
That's just from Luba actually. She told me.
yeah, behavior is important overall. Like don't skip it. You need it. In fact, that's probably one of the big reasons if you don't
Don't pass.
yeah, if you don't
Yeah.
pass, like maybe you were neglecting the
Yeah.
behavior, and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, if you're saying you saw 400 lead code
Mm-hmm.
questions, it's just not
Yeah.
it's not sufficient.
It's funny because I see a lot of I have a lot of friends that interview for companies and they always say, oh no, I think I aced it, but I don't know why I didn't get in. Right. So they always say that and I usually get scared because I'm like, oh my God, that's so weird then how do I know if I did well or not? Because even if they think they aced it, they didn't get in. I'm not sure. I'm not speaking for them, but it could be because it's behavioral. Because honestly, whenever I think I did well, like in terms of technically, I passed. And then if I know that I did not do well, then yeah, then obviously I did not pass. So for me, it's pretty clear cut. Like I could pretty much guess when I would get the offer and when I would not. So I have a feeling it's because my behavioral is okay, and I usually pass on that. And then it's only because of the technical now. So then for people who get really confused, like, dude, I did really well. I don't know why I didn't pass. That could be it. It could be because of the behavioral. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really, if you think about it, like as an engineer grows and becomes senior, they code less.
Mm.
And like their behavior skills, like teamwork, leadership, initiative, all of that stuff, design analysis becomes very important. Um, and usually, like you evaluate people based on their ability to grow into a senior engineer. Um, so like if you're tech, like I have seen um, junior engineers get in even though their technical skills were not so good,
Mm-hmm.
simply because like they brought that young spirit.
Spirit.
Yeah, they weren't jaded like the
Oh, I
old.
have a lot of young spirit when I interview.
Yeah,
You
I
gotta,
mean,
you gotta, you gotta
if you
feel.
if you have some of that and then you bring in some of that technical competency, like you can't have no technical skills. If you have some of that like that's already gonna get you off on a good start there.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Recruiters ask. Wait. Yeah, that's it.
Recruiters ask upfront about expected comp.
Uh-huh.
How can I answer that?
Oh,
So what do you do when they ask you about?
I give a really high expected compensation. Well, usually what I do is I check online. I see what's out there. I understand what their band is. We call it like a pay band, and then I go above that. Like, I think I asked like 250K or even up to 300K sometimes, even though that I know I would never get that total compensation. So yeah, just like give a high number, see what happens. Maybe they can meet you in the middle. I'm not very good at strategic stuff. Uh, like I don't get what the downfall of giving it too high is, but yeah. What about you? What do you do?
Uh,
Well,
I think you have to be a little strategic here. Okay, so
okay, I'm
first
not
of all,
strategic.
like um, recruiters are trying to evaluate your level. Okay, so I think that what you can do is um, first just like delay, just push that off. Just say like, yeah, let's talk about that after the interview, right? We can discuss that later, and
Mm-hmm.
usually you can delay it to
Oh,
then.
that's true. Yeah.
Like let's see how I do. Now after your interview performance, if you feel you totally aced it, then go high.
Yeah.
If
That's
you feel like
true.
you you totally bombed it, then just say like, yeah, I'll do it for 100K. Whatever you give me, I'll take it. Or you could just say just competitive market rate. And actually, I should mention,
I'll work for free.
it's illegal now.
Oh, is it to ask for expected
Um,
compensation, or I think it's illegal to ask what your compensation is.
yeah, like prior
Yeah,
comp.
but this is expected compensation. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Honestly, just ask for what you actually want. I think that also works. Like, what do you actually expect, but then higher? Because if you say your expected comp is X and they realize that X is really cheap for them, they're going to give you X. They wouldn't go higher for some reason. So, just go a little bit higher. But yeah.
I It depends. Yeah, so you could go on blind if you understand the salary bands, then you can do that. If you have no clue, then just say like something
Yeah.
competitive.
Wait, there's also levels.fyi or something. Let me just link this
Yeah,
real quick.
levels.fyi or
I think it's that site. I'm not sure.
blind.
Yeah, it's really nice. Oh, it's not.
And large companies will not shortchange you in general by too much, right? Like
Oh yeah,
they don't want they know coworkers will compare and they don't want you at some point to be like you're gonna quit because you got like half the pay of
yeah. Mm-hmm.
your coworkers. Like they're not. It's gonna be within that band.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, you don't necessarily need to micro optimize that too much.
Mm-hmm. How to write cover letters. Oh no, wait. What is the best way to deal with rejection?
I think we covered this one a
Yeah, we
little.
covered
Yeah.
this about the firing and rejection thing, but in essence, it's like you just have to get rejected a lot, and then you'll realize that's not the end of the world. You have a more holistic view of everything that you have, the skills that you built throughout the time. So
Yeah, I mean, like you can either space it out over 10 years, or
yeah,
you could just like get it all in right now and get those
yeah,
rejections in.
I,
But like,
hmm
yeah, so I would like,
yeah, and I also feel like this question is a little bit aligned with the other question, which is like, when am I ready? So let me just tell you, just apply to all the companies that you want to every year. There's no downfall to. They won't put you on a blacklist or anything, would they?
um, No, I think they do have your history,
Mm-mm.
uh, some historical performance,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah. How to write cover letters. Are
yeah.
they necessary for smaller companies? For some reason, I thought cover letters are even more necessary for smaller companies than
Yeah.
big companies.
Do you write them,
Uh,
or do you just give a resume?
I just give a resume nowadays, but when I was interning, I would write a cover letter for all of them in the beginning. But because I was I was new, right? But nowadays, because my resume is pretty like stacked, then it really doesn't matter unless it's like a smaller company. I remember BuzzFeed. I applied for BuzzFeed and they required a cover letter, and then because they require a cover letter, I just wrote it, and yeah, so that's pretty much it. But for cover letters, I would say that it's important if there's a message that you really want them to get. Like imagine if they read your resume, maybe you have a gap, or maybe you have a weird sets of skills, or maybe you really want to express how your sets of skills align perfectly with a specific team or with a specific mission of theirs, then yeah, then go ahead and write a cover letter. But don't write a cover letter just for the sake of writing it, because most of the time they just won't read it then if it's bland and there's like they could sniff it out that you're writing it just for the sake of writing it. Cover letters are not like you don't get extra points just to get a cover letter. You get extra points if the cover letter actually means something to them slash
Yeah.
you, right?
Yeah, like imagine you have like 50 resumes, right? Parsing a resume is very time consuming. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
mathematical formula. You have all this data, and then you have to piece it, read the whole thing, piece it together, and then in your mind you have this like one paragraph about what this person is. If you can write that one paragraph for the person, and just explain what the person's about to read, I think that could save a lot of time. Like that's kind of like what an objective is. Like if I'm scanning a resume and it's just like this person's all over the place.
Mm-hmm,
Like what do
mm-hmm.
they even want to be? Like
Right, right,
they're doing some machine learning, some front end work, and then they're like captain of the football team. It's like what is that? But if you could just say like, as captain of the football team, I have leadership skills, and then
right.
I use that to, you know, to teach other people a JavaScript, and I'm interested in becoming a JavaScript engineer. Oh, okay, right. That makes a lot more sense. And then this is how you may fit in with the company, where your strengths and competencies are. So that can like it can just like make a stronger case for you. But I agree with Joma that it does need to be. It's good if it's like personalized more,
Mm-hmm.
instead of just being like very generic.
Yeah. So I'm just replying to some comments, but listen.
Um, why don't I make my own company?
Yeah, why don't you make your own company,
I
bro?
I do. Like I have multiple offshore companies to hide assets from my ex, like off in the
Let's
Caymans.
edit this out.
I think seriously though, like you need to think about what you want in life, right? Like you got people um like those big like CEOs, right? Founders like Mark Zuckerberg, who are totally committed to their work. And then you have this other group of people who are like lifestyle entrepreneurs. You don't. I think that's what I identify with more. Like it's just my goal is not to come up with some huge company and then run it and manage that and like put a bunch of time into it. Like my goal is just to do something smaller in which I have a nice lifestyle. Like
Hmm.
Elon Musk does not have a good lifestyle.
Hmm.
He's committed to
Have you
building that.
have you read Tim Ferriss?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm into that lifestyle.
yeah. So it's like the 4 hour work week where
Hmm.
like you can do some traveling, you can chill, you can relax, and then you build up your side business and it's some passive income here and there, and you can enjoy your time. That's kind of the vein that I have been going
Hmm.
down more.
Yeah.
Although other people may be trained more
Hmm.
traditionally to like
Hmm.
um, the other thing is like when you start taking on venture capital or angel investors, like you have that obligation to
Hmm.
spend that money wisely and to make sure that you're really
Growing the
growing
company.
that business, right?
Hmm.
Like if you don't accept money from other people, then you can just be like, yeah, I'm just gonna take a week and take a break and play games all week, and
Hmm.
like no one's going to care, no one's gonna ask me about that,
Hmm.
and you don't have to 100x your investment.
Hmm.
Usually, when you take on VC
Yeah.
or even angel money, like you
Hmm.
need to 10x or 100x
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, like in my mind, like the goal that you should keep in mind is to have the ultimate freedom to do what you want to do, right? Because and that requires a lot of different things. You need different capital, money. That's one kind of capital, but time capital also. You have to have time. It's like imagine if you're a CEO of a big ass company. Yes, you might have a lot of money, but you have no time because like everyone is up your ass. Like you have no freedom. You have so many stakeholders that you have to please, and then because of that, you're not actually free. Even if you have a lot of money, you can't really spend it the way you want, right? We have a limited time in this world. We have limited time. We have limited youth. So you have to understand, like, think of it as a, imagine if you're selecting a character, you have a bunch of charts game. So you have like money, you have time, you have youth, you have all these like aspects in your life that can, translate into happiness that you want to maximize those, right? In a very smart way. It's like maybe you can work really hard to even talk about promotions or get like linearly scale your time with money, or you could like imagine if you okay, Uber is the kind like working like doing the real Uber, like driving cars. It would be the ultimate trading your time for money,
Yeah.
right? And that's only like that's limited, right? That's limited scalability. It's a little bit similar to real work where you trade time so that you can work, and then that's how much money you get. But you also have to think about ways in your life where you can maximize those two at the same time instead of just trading it, right? A lot of people, at least the people that I've met, they only focus on these two bands, the bands of how do I, shorten my time to increase the money, right? They just want to work more to increase money. That's why people work so hard for promotions. That's why people at some fan companies work super hard, is because they're pretty tunnel vision and they only see this way of increasing their monetary gain, but they don't realize that they're actually affecting their happiness because they're losing their time capital for that, right? But sometimes you have to understand every person is different. It depends on what opportunities you have. For example, a lot of you guys, the best opportunity is to land one of these fan companies because it will increase your capital by a lot, and this time investment is worth it. So every time investment that can increase your both time and money, then it's really worth not capitalizing on. It's really worth pursuing, right? Yeah, that's just my philosophy. I don't know if you guys actually care about this, but yeah, just always try not to be tunnel vision in what you have or like what everyone tells you can have or what societal norm is. You have to remember that your life is completely free technically. You don't even need a job if you don't want to, but just remember what are the trade-offs that you're making for each decisions that you make. Yeah, bro.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Uh, moving on. Tips for applying to smaller companies. I think I mentioned this a little earlier,
Mm,
but like, so I applied to Coinbase a while back, um, and actually, like, there's so many other startups that I applied to and worked for. Like, they're like families, like
mm,
they're so small and tight knit. They really hang out with each other.
mm-hmm,
They do holiday parties with each other. They bring their spouses and meet each other.
mm-hmm,
Um, because of that, I think that if you apply to a small company, that buddiness
mm-hmm,
that you can create during the interview
mm-hmm,
is absolutely essential.
mm-hmm.
And beyond that, being like a jack of all trades,
Right.
being open to doing anything. So if you
Mm-hmm.
go in and you say like, I only want to do machine learning,
Oh yeah.
um, I I want to do the coolest
Yeah.
machine learning. That's my interest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like
Yeah.
JavaScript. That's not going to get
Yeah.
you in.
That's actually pretty funny because I have a interview coming up with my brother, and we talk about an update of his life where he's transitioned into a machine learning engineer at his startup where it got acquired, and he told me that their goal is to do well as a machine learning engineer. What they're looking for a new one is that machine learning engineers who can also do everything else, because like like they can't look for people who are specifically just doing ML because they're startup mode, right? They want people who can do like everything, because sometimes the highest impact work is not to optimize that AUC curve on like a very specific problem. Sometimes it's the other things that are important, like maybe monitoring, maybe like how the infrastructure work, how it interacts with like humans, because not everything is 100% ML. You have pockets of problems that can be solved with ML, and ML is just a tool to build a very prosperous company, right? Okay.
And he's hiring, right?
He's hiring Appfolio. Well, it's called Dynasty, and then yeah, it's basically their company is Dynasty, but they got bought by Appfolio for like 60 million. And yeah, so yeah,
He should start Tech Interview Pro.
yeah, yeah, Tech Interview Pro. Yeah,
Uh, this I guess he's too rich to do it. I don't know.
yeah, no, he
Uh,
doesn't care. Yeah, so think about my life, always living in the shadows. But no, I'm kidding. All right, let's move on.
let's move on.
Let's move on.
This interview is over. For behavioral questions, can you talk about things you do outside of work, maybe at home or volunteer work?
Oh, for behavioral questions. Depends what kind of signals you give them when you talk about this. Like, don't just say like, "Oh yeah, I play League of Legends every day with my friends. I hang out."
Yeah,
There's no signal there.
I think like there's a I think we mentioned this a bit in the course, but there like you should understand what behavior interviews are about, right? One big thing is um, building consensus, um, handling conflicts at work, leadership, mentorship, right? Teaching people things, collaboration. Um, like maybe there's a ambiguous situation, a project that people don't understand how to move forward, and then you come up with a document and you get everybody on that, and you move the project forward through your own initiative and drive, right? Like things like that in the workplace environment is like those demonstrate, and also handling difficult, challenging scenarios where maybe you're wrong, handling failure, mistakes, recovering from that. Um, so like if you just say like, well, I'm a really friendly person, I care about other people, and I do volunteer for like homeless people, that's great. But at the same time, it's not hitting on the key words that like the key concepts that people may be evaluating you for, right? So um,
Yeah, the only way I think it could be beneficial is if you happen to have the same interest with the interviewer. So maybe you might get a little bit of brownie point, like that interviewer might like you more, but that's rare. Like it's a hit or miss, right? You have to be lucky for that.
yeah, I
Hmm.
like I think you could briefly some things are good, right? Like if you were in like the military and you were like a lead and like
Oh yeah,
like
that's right.
motivating people, like that could translate into the workplace quite
Yeah.
well, for example. So like maybe just if you have something, you can try and poke at it and see if there's interest, and if there's not, just move forward so you don't burn your own time on that. All right, we have time for maybe one or two more.
Mm-hmm. Just one more, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Can't find internships. How should I go about starting my own startup while
Or like, should
studying,
I? Yeah.
or should I start something so you can build your own experience?
Yeah. Uh, I mean, don't start a startup just for your resume, right? Isn't that a little bit crazy? Like if you do a project, sure, maybe you could do a project, but a startup is a huge commitment, right? I don't think a startup is just like, oh, let's just put that startup on my resume. Startups are not easy, right? It depends what you mean by startup, but most startups are not easy. If you're thinking about like, oh, I want to build like Airbnb or some service that you want millions of users to do, that's not an easy thing. And if you yeah, if you can't find internships, it means you're at school. Why don't you just yeah, no, don't do it. I feel like you might be underestimating what startups
Okay,
are.
so I can explain at least the way I do things
Okay, sure.
is I think about like where I want to be, like what tech I want to know. For example, like I might say, I want to become an iOS engineer. Okay, so I'm going to start learning that, and in order to learn that, I'm not going to just read a book. I'm going to come up with a project idea that I want to do based on that technology, and then build a project, and then that gets two things on my resume, right? Like I get the project on my resume, and then I also get the language and any other like tools that I have been learning for that. So um, that's like it's a path in which you're both learning, positioning yourself into like where you want to be, and also you're building up some experience for that. um, I mean, beyond that, like I think that it's especially difficult in the beginning. It's not always going to be this difficult, right? So in the beginning, like look into any type of opportunity that you can get just to get your start, right? This could be like um, asking anybody you know, like if they need any type of work that needs to be done. I got my start because my aunt like offered me like a short internship, like just a quick summer internship at her company. So like ask for referrals from your friends and family. Maybe get onto sites like Craigslist or Upwork, and offer your skills, right? Do some quick work for other people, like maybe help design a website or something like that. And like these things can act as that initial experience just to get you going. You're not going to like it's pretty rare for a brand new grad to suddenly get into Google. I think that's um, it's just a more difficult path than if you were to think about having like small stepping stones along the way.
Cool, cool. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for today. We're out of time.
Any questions that we need to
Yeah.
answer
Any
here?
last minute questions? Yeah, we could spend like 5 minutes to blow through some of the questions if you guys have like really, really good ones. Did you have to learn ML when you were a data scientist? Not ML in the terms of production machine learning, but the only thing that you have to know is like a bunch of regressions, right? Because in the end, what you do is you're just forecasting something. So I just don't like how ML is portrayed nowadays, but yeah, you do learn some ML concepts and then you use it when you need to use it. But I was mostly a data like scientist slash analyst where I just look into a product and try to find the best decisions to make. Cool.
Why the dull interior background?
This is not dull. This is not dull.
We gotta get like a green screen and like change it to
We're in Paris. We're in Japan. Yeah. Last minute question: how does one become the tech lead?
you you have to challenge me to a duel to the death. It's
Yeah.
not it's not gonna be easy, but
Oh, we did that at startup episode 7.
yeah,
We did
you
the
risk
dual.
your life
Yeah.
basically, but
Yeah.
it can be done. No one's ever done it.
All right. Anyways, thanks for joining. You guys have been great. Hope
Thanks.
you enjoyed this. And yeah, good luck again and get those jobs. See
We'll
ya.
see you next time.